What's up, fishing friends and family? I'm Zeag, and in this video, we're making a goldfish. Probably can't see that. There you go, it looks like this. It's a very thick lure. You'll see why in a minute. No, I shouldn't have left my coffee there. Okay, once you've cut out your profile, you start cutting out your contour, which I've marked out here. Now that we have our profile cut out and our contour cut out, it's time to do the chamfer, which will make it look like this. You can see we have a rounded shape from this view, and we have a kind of rounded shape from this view, but from this view, it's basically a square still. Chamfering is doing 45-degree cuts this way and then rounding them off, and you start to get into something a little more round. And then you add a cool top fin. There's lots of ways to remove the chamfer from your project. For this one, I'm using a Kiradashi style knife because of all the small little nooks that I have to get into and carve. Another common way is just to use a belt sander and just kind of go at it from a 45-degree angle and gently remove it. You can see here we've got some progress on the one side. And then the next step is sanding. Lots of sanding. So this is nowhere near enough sanding for this yet, but I think you get the process. You just have to repeat this across the whole lure, all along the fins or wherever it is that needs to get chamfered. At this point, it should be obvious I've made two of these, and what we're going to do is we're going to continue the rest of the video with this one because of time. This one's much further along. So the next steps are to add hardware and weight ballast to this. I've already drilled a hole for the weight. Let's add that first. I'm going to be using 44 caliber lead ball, and then covering that with some baking soda and some super glue. We'll sand that smooth later. Next, let's put in a line tie and the hook hanger that comes out of the back. Remember, once you've twisted these, your eye isn't quite flat. Take your needle nose pliers or something like that and take the flat spot and squeeze them tight, and then those become much more flat and not all curvy. I think now's as good a time as any to explain how this lure works. So in the water, this lure's action is none. It just goes straight through the water. When I first built the prototype of this lure, I just was making a goldfish and experimenting with fins, and I decided to fish with it. And at first it frustrated me because of it just went straight through the water and sank. This one should do the same thing. Should go straight to the water and sink. So I was frustrated with the lure at first because it had no action, and then at night I went out and I threw it in the water just because I was bored and it was attached to my fishing rod, and then I pulled in this giant bass. I realized something as I was fishing with it, though, before I caught the giant bass. If you've ever fished at a place with what I call seaweed, you know how you cast out and then bring in, I don't know, 8 feet of seaweed with you. But this lure didn't bring any back in, pretty much. I mean, I can't guarantee you won't get something, but every time I reeled it in, it was basically clear of seaweed. And then I caught a giant bass. So this is a successful lure if you know how to use it and when to use it. And the way that that works is because of these fins. The hook trails behind here, and these just seem to, I guess, brush the weeds to the side as it pulls through. And they don't get all tangled up on the one treble hook off the back here. Works great. Be floating behind it like this. Let's go check it out in a fish tank. The next step is clear coat. Time to paint. I already did the whole thing white. Orange is next. A little bit of pearl white just on the bottom here. Before I painted these scales, I put another clear coat on. I've mentioned it in the past, I like to put clear coats in between my layers of detail. So I'll start with what's basically the skin of the fish, and then a clear coat over that, and then the scales, a clear coat, and then gills and a clear coat, and then any other details along the way where they need to go. It gives a neat 3D effect to your details, and I think it really makes them pop. Before I started painting these gills, I did apply another clear coat over the scales I just painted, which wound up coming in real handy because I oversprayed when I painted that gill onto this fin here, and I was able to just wipe it off. This is a great trick for if you have a detail that you're worried about getting right, you can wipe it off and try again if you mess up. I started with black to establish a shadow or a line for the gill, and now I'm adding pearlized copper as the color of the gill. You just move the stencil forward a bit and add your color. There's our finished gills. Let's talk eyes. The eyes I'm using for this, I had custom made by a glass artist named Kerry Ferguson. He has a wonderful gallery in Marblehead, Ohio called Ferguson Gallery, and he doesn't just do eyes. This is nothing. He really does huge pieces of glass artwork. You should check his stuff out. I'll put a business card up on the screen. There's no secret to how I got these eyes on here. I made the holes for it using a Forstner bit, and then just a drop of super glue, and I put the eyeball in. You may have noticed I put a big glop of UV resin over each eye and hardened it on there. I kind of want it to look like a big bubble eye. Hopefully it looks good under the final clear coat, which is the next step. The question that's asked the most in lure making is clear coats. What are you using for your clear coat? How do you do your clear coat? How do you get your clear coat to be perfect? Well, here we are with an imperfect clear coat. In fact, this went terribly. The 30-minute epoxy I used on this started to set up in about 5 minutes. And the mistake I made was thinking I could go for it. And I put the clear coat on, and then it dried all gloppy. I've already sanded it now. And you can see it just looks like it's coated in sugar. The bulk of my resin is on there. It's still thick. It's just a lot more flat and even. My idea now is just to put some polyacrylic on top of this. It should make it clear again. And I think that's about all we can do with this at this point, besides, completely starting over. I think it's going to be fine. This is probably going to wind up being more of an art piece than a fished all the time fishing lure, even though it's ready to be fished. And if we scratch the clear coat a little, it'll be all right. So I'm going to dip this in poly, and we'll get back to you. I might have saved the day. Didn't turn out too bad considering how bad it was. I hope this fin design inspired you to maybe try something like this if you're building things, which I hope you are. Let me know in the comments if you do mess around with this design. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.